Previously, we took a look at the performance of the Samsung Galaxy A34, the Galaxy A54, and the Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus, which you can watch in the top right-hand corner. Our conclusion was that all three had more than enough firepower to get you through daily tasks, even though they may not be able to play the most demanding games quite so well. But there's one other thing that buyers look for in these mid-range phones, and that is the cameras. Like most flagships, you get a triple camera setup on all of them, but given that even the most expensive model here costs half as much as a base Galaxy S23, they can't be all that good, right? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Which of these camera phones are the best, and are they even usable to begin with? Let's take a closer look. Being on the budget end of the scale, all three phones have pretty decent main cameras, but Samsung and Xiaomi have both skimped on the other shooters. The A34 and A54's main cameras are pretty similar on paper. The cheaper model has a 48 megapixel sensor versus the A54's 50 megapixels, and they both come with an f1.8 aperture and optical image stabilization. But as we all know, you don't shoot photos on paper. Really though, it's the ultra-wide where you're getting your money's worth. Whereas the A34 has an 8 megapixel camera, the A54 bumps the megapixel count to 12. But if megapixels is what you're looking for, then the Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus has got you covered. You get not 50, not 108, but 200 megapixels, as many as the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra in fact. You also get a larger f1.7 aperture along with OIS. Mid-range phone cameras are all about compromise though, so the Note 12 Pro Plus's ultra-wide is just an 8 megapixel shooter. And as is par for the course for this price range, all three phones come with the macro camera. 2 megapixels for the Redmi, 5 megapixels for the Samsung. At the front, you'll find a 12 megapixel selfie camera on the A34, set within a teardrop-shaped cutout in the display. Both the A54 and the Note 12 Pro Plus come with a more premium hole-punch selfie camera, with a resolution of 16 megapixels for the Redmi and 32 megapixels for the A54. All three phones may boast similar megapixel counts to flagship phones, but one look at the photos and you can clearly see that the smaller sensors don't quite deliver the same color reproduction and dynamic range. The Samsung phones deliver broadly similar photos in bright daylight, particularly in terms of detail. However, the A54 benefits from greater contrast, and it's also a little wider. As for the Redmi, it is about as wide as the A54, but offers less contrast than even the A34. It also tends to overexpose the photos. You do get a bit more detail thanks to the 200 megapixel sensor, but not by much. The differences between the three phones are more noticeable when you look at photos from the ultra-wide cameras. The A54's higher resolution gives it a distinct advantage, producing images that are more consistent with the main cameras. The Redmi can't match the A54 in terms of color reproduction, but it runs it very close in terms of detail, likely due to the extra processing and sharpening. The A34's photos look very soft in comparison, though it surprisingly delivers more contrast and saturation compared to the main camera's photos. None of these phones come with a telephoto camera, so if you want a close-up shot and don't want to use your feet, you'll have to use the digital zoom function. This is where the Redmi's 200 megapixel camera really comes into its own, because you can take an optical zoom photo by cropping into the high resolution sensor. Still, the A54's image processing does a decent job of recreating the details, and its color reproduction is still superior here. The A54 performs noticeably worse, offering neither the detail nor the dynamic range of the other two. As for selfies, they all do a decent job, but the Redmi has a more neutral white balance, and the A54 delivers more contrast and detail thanks to the higher resolution camera. They also perform very similarly in terms of portraits, handling cutouts of subjects fairly well. If I had to choose between these three, it would be the Redmi, as its roll-off is more natural. All three phones have fairly mediocre macro cameras, and the results are predictable. The photos are soft, with very washed out colors, and even though the Samsung phones have more than double the resolution, the Redmi appears to have more detail. Now let's look at video performance. All three of these devices come with optical image stabilization, but you're not going to mistake any of these as coming from an iPhone. Still, of the three, it's the A54 that shoots the most pleasing videos, with good stabilization, white balance and detail. The A34 comes from a close second, cementing Samsung's lead for videos on Android phones, even in this price range. The Redmi simply can't match the color reproduction of those phones, and its videos look shaky by comparison. That's when shooting 1080p videos, however. For whatever reason, all three phones turn off stabilization for 4K videos, and walao guys, them shaky sia. As night falls, the three phones start to struggle a little, as you would expect from mid-range devices. The images are soft and a little bit noisy, but the A54 does fare the best here, offering more detail and a brighter exposure compared to the others. This advantage only grows wider with the ultra-wide cameras. The A54 is the only one here to take somewhat usable photos, although it too exhibits plenty of softness and chromatic aberration, particularly in the corners. The A34 and Redmi, on the other hand, are just awful. Photos from the selfie cameras are much the same as during the day, with the A54 again being a clear favourite thanks to the greater detail and a higher dynamic range. The Redmi does appear to handle hair detail ever so slightly better than the other two, however. The darker lighting levels the playing field when it comes to videos. All three phones deliver decent but not outstanding stabilization in 1080p mode, though again the A54 appears to provide a more consistent exposure and better highlight control. Still, it's very obvious that these are mid-range phones with very limited hardware. One surprising thing is that despite their reasonable prices, all three phones offer a Pro mode with full manual control, enabling you to experiment with shutter speeds to shoot some pretty fun photos. You don't get that with an iPhone. Shooting with these phones, it's clear which one is the winner here. The A54 offers a more consistent experience across a wide variety of conditions, whether you're shooting photos or videos. The Redmi can't quite match its versatility, and despite having a 200 megapixel main camera, it doesn't offer noticeably more detail. The A34 brings up the rear, being most obviously constrained by its camera hardware. So the A54 takes the cake then, but is it 300 ringgit better? I'm not so sure. That's a lot of money, and we've already established that it isn't all that much better in terms of performance either. Obviously, Samsung's commitment to 4 years of Android updates and its extensive after-sales support is hard to overlook, and I can totally understand if those things matter to you. Still, if value for money is important to you, and if you only have so much cash to spend on a phone, it really should be, then the Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus is the one to go for. It offers a good amount of performance and a decent camera system, along with several other headlining features like its 120-watt fast charging. At this price, it's really hard to beat. Thank you so much for watching this camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A34, the A54, and the Redmi Note 12 Pro Plus. What do you think? Which one would you buy? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and ring the notifications bell icon so you don't miss any of our future videos. As always, stay awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!